dancers, I'm Rachel Fine. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and founder of To the Pointe Nutrition. I also created the website dancenutrition.com, and why am I here right now? Well, I couldn't be more excited to be joining Capizio to give you my best tips for maximizing your food choices as a way to optimize your performance. Aside from being the dance nutritionist, I'm also a dancer, so I get it. I understand firsthand the physical, emotional, and mental demands that we dancers face. As a result, I've decided to dedicate my entire career to educating you about how to fuel your performance for a sustainable and long-lasting career that is, of course, injury-free. As dancers, we are artistic athletes. That means that our nutritional needs are different from those of the general population. Now, there's no doubt that given the current circumstance of living in a global pandemic, dancers worldwide are struggling with studio closures, performance, and even season cancellations, and, well, what seems like a major pause that's been placed on our system. So in today's video, we're gonna discuss a few of my best tips for navigating this uncertain and, of course, unprecedented time. For the past several months, most of us have been stuck at home, hopefully trying to make the best of keeping up with our dance routine, despite not being able to get into the studio. There's no doubt that this can pose a ton of mental anxiety and stress. With so much still unknown about our current situation, it can be very difficult to navigate such a confusing time. So how does all of these emotions, all of this uncertainty, and perhaps all of this anxiety even relate to our food choices and how we're, well, fueling our performance? I hear from many dancers about how they should be fueling through such a time where perhaps you might not be dancing to the intensity that you're used to. Depending on where you live, you may or may not have already gotten back to the studio. The bottom line for most of us, however, is it's out of our control. And this can be scary, especially if you're a dancer like myself that is kind of a little type A and likes to be in control over their life. So this can be super difficult when we have a situation that is just completely out of our hands and with the future so unknown. And what tends to happen? We tend to rely on coping mechanisms in order to find some bit of comfort in what feels like so much uncertainty. For some dancers, this means controlling other aspects of their life. And what first comes to mind? Food and body weight. If you feel like you have turned to controlling food and or your body weight during these uncertain times, I want you to know that I understand. In the past, I too have struggled with wanting to control something like my food choices as a way to cope with what might be out of our control. So, for example, forgetting the current situation, forgetting the global pandemic, think about a time perhaps when a dancer might choose to turn to their food choices as a way to control something that might be out of their hands. Well, what comes to mind for me? An audition. It is very common for dancers to think if they control their food, if they implement certain restrictive rules over their food choices, they will be able to grasp some bit of control over their current situation, and perhaps maybe it's striving for a specific role in a show. Here's the problem. Eating, it's a very biological process, and we can only exert so much control over such a biological process. Now, I discuss this a lot with the dancers that I work with in my online program, The Healthy Dancer, which I'll fill you in on a bit later. But trying to control an innate biological systems such as fueling our body or maintaining energy balance is actually not a sustainable approach. And the reason for that is because our body has specific biological and even psychological mechanisms in place that can somewhat revolt against the external control that you're attempting to place on your food choices. So one of my most basic examples about this is, as humans, we're curious beings. We somewhat always want what we don't already have. That's the whole purpose of what we strive for and what keeps us going and motivated. But the same holds true for our food choices. If you're telling yourself you can't eat pizza or you can't eat dessert, guess what? Down the road, you're gonna want it. Bottom line, restrictions breed desires. I want you to remember that. How about body weight? Well, when we try to control our body weight or try to maintain a weight that isn't perhaps sustainable for our body, perhaps it's too low of a weight that's supporting our metabolic and physical needs as dancers, well, the same thing happens. Our body tries to revolt against this. Increasing your cravings and your hunger levels are just some of the biological repercussions of attempting to maintain a body weight that is too low for one specific body and or attempting to maintain a highly restrictive caloric diet. So how can we navigate such an uncertain time when so much is out of our control? Well, first realize that you can control something, but instead of trying to control your food choices and your body weight, I want you to control your reaction to thoughts that make you feel anxious or perhaps down about your body or about the future or about your dance abilities. Control your reaction to these negative thoughts. When a negative thought enters your head, for example, if you're looking in the mirror and you feel that your legs just don't look as toned as maybe they did while you were dancing at the studio full-time prior to the pandemic, change that thought. Instead of thinking, well, let me restrict my food intake, let me try to diet or to restrict the amount of calories I'm eating, realize that those methods of control are not sustainable. Like I said before, restrictions, whether it's on your daily caloric intake or perhaps on certain food choices, restrictions breed desires. It breeds hunger, it breeds cravings. So we really want to try and avoid a restrictive mindset around food and instead show yourself compassion. If your worst issue right now is that you can't get into the studio as much as you would like, consider yourself lucky. We're dealing with a global pandemic, and it's quite scary. As long as you have your health, that's what's most important. Perhaps when such thoughts enter your mind and you start feeling anxious, ask yourself, what could help me right now? It's not going to be a restricted diet. It's not going to be skipping out on that meal or snack. Maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's picking up a new hobby, like knitting. Dancers can never have enough warm-up clothing, right? Maybe it's reading a book or listening to music. Perhaps turn to other activities as a way to better handle such an uncertain time. I've received a couple questions that I wanted to cover about how to handle being home more and being less active. As dancers, we're used to pretty busy schedules. Whether you're balancing classes, rehearsals, performances, and perhaps you're also balancing a job and or academic schoolwork on top of it, there's no doubt that dancers are pretty good multitaskers, and we're just used to busy schedules. One of the biggest questions that I'm receiving these days is, Rachel, how much should I actually be eating while I'm stuck at home? I'm also not exercising as much. So this is a great question, and this is why it can be so easy for dancers to turn to very regimented and even calorically restrictive diets during the current time. But instead, I want you to utilize this time attempting something new, and that's called intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is a non-diet approach to food. It teaches us how to build a sustainable relationship with not only food, but also with our body. This approach encompasses 10 principles that center around tuning in and learning more about your personal hunger levels, fullness levels, and even satisfaction at meals. When I get the question, Rachel, how much should I be eating? Well, I'm asking you the same question. When you're sitting down at a meal, start tuning in to how you feel physically. When I work with dancers one-on-one, we review something called the hunger fullness scale. It's a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being famished to 10 being uncomfortably full. We work through using this scale during meal times as a way to assess your body's personal fullness cues. That's how much you should know to eat. Now beware, if you are currently recovering from a diagnosed eating disorder, or you have followed an extremely restrictive diet in the recent past, such as a calorically restrictive diet, you might actually not be ready to dive into listening to your hunger and fullness cues. And that's because we can lose touch with our hunger and fullness cues when coming from a place of extremely controlled eating, such as on a restrictive diet. I discuss more about reclaiming your hunger and fullness cues in a blog post that we're going to link below. One thing that can help, however, is relying on a flexible meal plan that incorporates, for example, 3 meals and 2 snacks throughout your day. Even if you are not dancing as much as you normally do, sticking to a flexible meal plan that, let's just say, includes breakfast, mid-morning snack, lunch, afternoon snack, and dinner, this plan can help you get back in touch with your intuitive feelings of hunger and fullness. So over time, you can better listen to your body and what it needs to fuel. This is the work of building trust with your body. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And I truly encourage you to check out the articles we're linking below to learn more about this process. Creating such a flexible meal plan can help you if you ever feel like you just want to, for example, eat all day long while being stuck at home. If you feel that you are going back and forth into the kitchen every hour on the hour, well, attempt this flexible meal plan that I spoke about. Also, you'll want to assess if what you're eating is satisfying you. When we feel satisfied with our meals and snacks, we're less likely to overdo it or overdo it mindlessly in the long run. In order to feel satisfied after eating, we have to focus on balance. Balance means we're incorporating 3 macronutrients in each of our meals and snacks. The 3 macronutrients being a source of carbohydrate, a source of protein, and a source of fat. All 3 macronutrients from our food play a role in our fullness levels and our satisfaction levels. So for example, instead of just snacking on some fruit, pair your fruit with a nut butter or seed butter in order to create a more balanced and satisfying situation. Another example, if you're centering your dinner around a protein veggie mix, let's say for example, you're having grilled chicken with maybe some zoodles or zucchini noodles, realize that this is an unbalanced meal. We need to incorporate a source of complex carbohydrates and a source of fat in order to make this more balanced. So my suggestion, add some regular spaghetti in there, mix it with the zoodles, and of course, construct a sauce. My personal favorite, a little bit of garlic, extra virgin olive oil. This is going to help create a more balanced and satisfying situation. It can be easy for dancers to fear certain macronutrients, like, for example, carbohydrates and fat. But realize carbohydrates and fat are energy sources for your body, among other responsibilities. Fat is also required for the transport and absorption of many vitamins and minerals, and therefore we should be incorporating sources of both carbs and fat throughout our day, every day, even if you are not dancing as much as you normally do. Every opportunity that you have to eat a meal and or a snack, like for example with that flexible meal plan we spoke about earlier, ask yourself 3 questions. Where is my source of carbohydrate? Where is my source of fat? And where is my source of protein? I'm linking an article that breaks this down a little bit more and focuses on certain types of foods to incorporate within each of these macronutrients. For example, choosing complex carbohydrates that are higher in fiber and therefore going to sustain your energy levels for longer. Emotional eating is another question that dancers are asking me during this time. Remember, there's a lot of uncertainty. We're anxious, we're nervous. Some of us don't yet know when we'll be back in the studio, let alone performing. And therefore, emotions are running high. Specifically, emotions like nerves, anxiety, depression, sadness, and even disappointment. These are just some emotions that can leave you feeling pretty down and out. And sometimes when we feel anxious or stressed, it can be easy to want to turn to food for comfort. Have you ever opened a bag of chips or a pint of ice cream when you were just not feeling too good? Well, don't feel bad about this. It's a very common response to feeling stressed or anxious, for example. But we have to realize something. Food is not going to solve the issue, right? Eating mindlessly in front of your computer or while you're scrolling along your phone is not going to solve the reason why you're feeling stressed and anxious. And what's most difficult about our current situation is that a solution might not yet be in plain sight. Again, a lot is unknown about this global pandemic. Whereas in the past, perhaps you felt stressed or anxious about an upcoming exam, and maybe you felt you were emotionally eating, the current situation is a little bit different. We can't necessarily pinpoint or, for example, study more or practice more in order to succeed in that exam. It's a very different situation, and thus we have to turn to other coping mechanisms that can at least help us bridge our time during this uncertainty. So as I mentioned earlier, choosing additional hobbies like knitting and reading, listening to music, maybe it's writing in a journal, maybe it's cooking or baking. Find activities that use your hands. Another favorite of mine, believe it or not, is beading, like beading necklaces or bracelets. These activities will help you better utilize your time and therefore help you until that negative emotion passes. Turning to a mental health therapist can also be very helpful and is highly encouraged if you feel that these negative emotions are not passing. Another major question that I get is, Rachel, how do we survive low levels of exercise or dance? Most of us have not been able to keep up with our normal routine, and that can be, I'm not gonna lie, very difficult. It's difficult for my own self. But on the flip side, this is where we have to start building trust and compassion with our current situation. Right now, most of us worldwide cannot dance and perform in the way that we want to. You are not alone. We've all been dealt the same deck of cards. Now, don't get me wrong, some dancers might have more space to take virtual classes. They might already be back in studios. So there's no doubt that even though we have all been dealt the same deck of cards, not every dancer is, of course, in the same situation. And I want you to know that I understand that and I'm aware of that. But I want you to build trust with yourself and your personal situation. Realize that at the end of the day, this is temporary. We will get back into the studio. We will get back to opportunities of being on stage and doing what we love, which is dance. So if we have to take 2 steps back in order to take 1 step forward, be okay with that. You are not alone. Try to lessen your expectations. This can be tough. I get it. As dancers, we have high standards and high expectations. But for the current time, I just want you to try and set those expectations a little lower. Don't expect from yourself what you might expect if you were dancing in the studio full time right now. Your progress might be slower, and that's okay. Like I said, at the end of the day, this is a temporary situation. We will get back to some sense of normalcy. I can't yet promise when that's going to be, but it will be. I'm not saying to just throw, dance, and exercise and cross-train at the window. I still want you to do what you love. Just be a little bit more patient with what you can handle in the space you have. Choose to dance and cross-train because you enjoy it, because you love it, and because down the road you want to improve. Just remember that right now you might not be able to see improvements at the rate that you would have seen perhaps when in the studio. And again, be patient, be understanding, and be okay with that. It's temporary. Now, one of the biggest questions that I am getting during this time, Rachel, what happens if I gain weight? There is no doubt that our culture breeds a major fear around weight gain. And I have a lot to say about this topic. In fact, I'll link an article below so you can read more. But the bottom line is that we are dealing with an unprecedented time right now. And thus, if weight gain is your only problem, I consider you lucky. Logistically, stick to that consistent meal plan that incorporates balanced meals and snacks to best serve your body and its personal nutritional needs. And if a couple pounds do come on, be patient with yourself and trust the fact that implementing hard, fast rules on your food, such as following a calorically restrictive diet or perhaps omitting carbs or omitting fats from your diet, it's not going to last long term. It's going to put you at risk for injury. And bottom line, it's going to make eating really miserable and unhappy. As I said before, those 3 macronutrients all play roles in our satisfaction, and it's important to choose meals and snacks that are satisfying you because that's how you're going to best set yourself up to tune into those fullness cues. Now, if you're feeling overly anxious about this, then I suggest you reach out to me. I work with dancers both one-on-one and even in groups to help them navigate a personalized plan to not just figure out how to fuel your performance, but also to build confidence in your body. The bottom line, I want dancers to love their body. And if you're feeling like you're just not there right now, then please reach out to me. You can visit my websites, dancenutrition.com and pointenutrition.com, to learn more about the services that I offer dancers. I have an online course and multiple ebooks that can help you navigate your performance nutrition. And if you want to learn more about finding confidence in your body, then I suggest you sign up for my 5 Days to Body Confidence Challenge, which is exclusive to dancers. You'll join me and thousands of other dancers who have already dived into 5 activity-filled days of building a better body image. This challenge is not only fun, but it's also free. So I'll share the link below. Make sure to join. It's been a pleasure educating you today. I hope we covered some of your most burning questions about how to handle the unprecedented time. Remember, as dancers, it's not only our physical health that's important to focus on. Our mental and emotional well-being also plays a major role in our sustainability as dancers. And therefore, learning how to navigate the true test of time, like for example, a global pandemic, is going to make you stronger mentally and emotionally. So keep up the great work. I'll see you back here for some more episodes and topics.